Back in 2004, when I was a young buck just starting to play in a band, I used to hang out with my cousin and his girlfriend on the regular. We all had somewhat eclectic tastes in music, but most of all, I was a big Metallica fan and my cousin was a big Beatles fan. And to this day, we both are. At least, can you tell on my end? So one day I go right out to his place to pick him and his girlfriend up, and he says to me, "Dude, I gotta tell you about this band. Have you ever heard of Beatallica?" I said, "No, Beatallica, who the hell is that?" He said they're this spoof comedy band that mixes up Metallica and the Beatles all up in one band. And I did not know how to feel about that. I said, "What does that mean?" And he looks me straight in the face and says, "Their bassist's name is Cliff McBurtney." I said, "What are you waiting for? Put that shit on!" So he slaps this burned CD of the Grey album in my CD player hooked to my cassette deck of my '89 Thunderbird, and the first song comes on called Blackened the USSR. And I am immediately hooked. More songs start playing like And I'm Evil and Got to Get You Trapped Under Ice, and I realize this is one of the best things I never knew I needed. I go onto their website, and I check out the rest of their stuff, and I end up getting turned on to the Beatles in the process. Fast forward about a year or so, and I'm checking onto the site, kind of loosely keeping up on them, because I want to see them if they end up playing in my area. All of a sudden, their website is shut down with no explanation. Nothing. 404. Crickets. Well, it turns out things got real complicated real fast, and some very unlikely heroes ended up stepping in and saved this band from certain doom. Folks, this is the story of Beatallica. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, circa 2001. Good friends and former bandmates Michael Tierney and Michael Brandenburg are hanging out listening to music when the Beatles song For No One pops up on the radio. One thing to note here is Tierney wasn't in a working band at this time, while Brandenburg was in a progressive rock band called Ka. Their conversation turns to how they both noticed the Beatles were extremely musically progressive, and at times, really heavy sounding for the era they came from. The conversation continues into the Beatles' lyrical content, and eventually, the concept of metalized covers of Beatles songs comes up. Now at this time, Tierney is part of a yearly festival in Milwaukee called Spoof Fest, which takes place around April 1st, because what other day would you have it? Spoof Fest is themed towards local musicians doing over-the-top shows spoofing big-name musicians for the fun of it. This year, for a good laugh, Tierney and Brandenburg decide to spoof Metallica, but with an extra twist. They slam together an EP on a whim as an over-the-top version of Metallica, paying tribute to their heroes, the Beatles. They choose 7 Beatles songs and mapped out arrangements that integrated Metallica's signature crushing riffs and tones from their early thrash days. After sprinkling Metallica references all over the Beatles' original lyrics, they created a spastic hybrid of 2 bands that fit together like a musical peanut butter and razor blade sandwich. The results were hilarious. Tierney and Brandenburg booked a day at Bobby Peru's recording studio in Milwaukee and slammed out all 7 songs in 1 or 2 takes, and the songs were recorded and mixed all in the same day. By the end, the finished EP was named A Garage Day's Night. When Spoof Fest came around, they burned 40 CDs of the new EP and passed it out to showgoers. As far as they were concerned, the mission was a success. Now, unbeknownst to them, this EP ends up making it onto the internet and gets into the hands of another Wisconsin native, David Dixon. Dixon knows absolutely nothing about where any of this music came from, but he thinks it's the best thing he's heard since Spinal Tap. He loves the material so much, he decides to name this unknown band Beatallica, and then he purchases the website Beatallica.org and throws the MP3s up on the site for free download. A few months after the website goes up, around October 2001, Tierney receives a phone call. On the other end of the phone is Dixon, who, since the website was up, discovered the origins of the mysterious Beatallica EP and its relation to Spoof Fest. Dixon says to Tierney, "I want to talk to you about your band." Tierney says, "My band? I'm not in a band, man." Dixon then proceeds to tell him about all of the fan feedback reaching all over, far out of Milwaukee. Fan demand for more music and more info on Beatallica. We're talking who's who, where are they playing, when's the next EP coming out, etc. Dixon tells Tierney, "You guys have to do another album." Tierney and Brandenburg start brainstorming. They decide to take their personal mashup humor and apply it to an entire band concept. The characters James Linfield, Kirk Hammett, Cliff McBurtney, and Ringo Lars are born, and Beatallica the band are on the road to becoming a full-fledged internet sensation. During this process, they heed Dixon's advice and decide to record another EP. They go back into the studio with their original EP's producer, now nicknamed Flemball Ras Martin, and create a new debut EP under the Beatallica name, combining the Beatles' self-titled album, nicknamed the White Album, and Metallica's self-titled album, nicknamed the Black Album. Their debut EP, Beatallica, is nicknamed the Grey Album. I mean, at this point, everything starts to fall into place so damn well it writes itself. The Grey Album is debuted for free on Beatallica's official website on April 1st, 2004. Download traffic almost immediately overloads their servers, and they end up having to ask other people to host their MP3s of the new EP so their fans can download them. It becomes known to everyone involved at this point this band is no longer a tiny little one-off project by a couple of friends joking around. Beatallica has become way more than that. The band responds to demand and new show offers by recruiting Paul Terrian as bassist Cliff McBurtney and Brandenburg's co-bandmate Ryan Charles on drums as Ringo Lars. Hey guys, Mike from the future. I'm actually in the middle of editing right now, but I had a bit of an epiphany. So while I was doing my research for this video, I actually was able to have a bit of an email correspondence with James Lenfield. One of the things that he let me know was Paul Terrian was not the original Cliff McBurtney. They actually had a guy that they hired for like a month, and he never actually played a show with them, but he ended up having to leave the group because he couldn't commit. Technically what this means is that Cliff McBurtney, like the real Cliff McBurtney, is not the actual original bassist of the band. This technically means Beatallica has a Stu McGovney character as well. I just thought this was a really funny coincidence. I don't think it's ever actually been talked about. I don't see it on the Wikipedia. This is the first time I had heard about it. They've never named him. It's not an official name. So I thought it was really funny to point out. It's just this weird deep cut kind of a thing, but it's really funny. Hey guys, Mike from Even Farther in the Future, real quick with one last minute thing. So after I was done editing this first rough cut, I sent it off to James to verify all the information and make sure that it was valid. And he just threw me a quick correction. It turns out the guy in this picture right here is not Paul Terrian. This gentleman's name is Lee Brusso, and he was the first actual Cliff McBurtney, who went and toured with them and all that kind of stuff first. So I am incorrect about Paul Terrian being the first Cliff. He actually was not the first Cliff. Lee Brusso was the first Cliff, and then Paul Terrian didn't show up until after Brusso left, and Terrian is the bassist on the first legit release Beatallica album, which we talk about later. So, my apologies for kind of editing on top of an edit, but I wanted to make sure all of the information is correct. Okay, we're going to continue from here. Thanks for watching and enjoy. Okay, enough from me. Let's get back to the video. They start playing shows in Chicago, Cleveland, and the Wisconsin area, including a show in Madison where they open up for Dream Theater. As a matter of fact, Mike Portnoy invited the band to open for them himself and actually joined them on stage for a song. Word continues to get around for about the next year or so. The band continues to blow up, and word actually gets out to the guys in Metallica about this new spin-off tribute band. Lars Ulrich and Kirk Hammett are both vocal about their enjoyment and approval of the band and its unique co-tribute to both Metallica and the Beatles. Then on February 4th, 2005, the band and their now webmaster, David Dixon, received a cease and desist letter from Sony ATV Publishing. The letter claimed that Beatallica were infringing on Sony's copyright of the Beatles material, and that they were causing substantial and irreparable injury to the Beatles brand and catalog. Sony had even asked the band to pay unspecified damages for their so-called infringement. The band was blindsided and totally unsure how to proceed. This whole thing just started as a for-fun tribute from a couple of guys in Milwaukee that, regardless of the newfound fame, were barely making ends meet, playing shows and having fun. These guys all have day jobs just like everyone else. And being that the music was free and they weren't making any profit, as far as they knew, there was no loss to Sony or Metallica for the music or anything else. However, whether or not you make money from music has no bearing on whether or not you infringe upon copyright. But hell, as far as they knew, Beatallica may have fit under parody according to the Two Live Crew versus Roy Orbison case from 1994. Now, just to be clear, I am not a lawyer, and I have never done a study on this case before, but I may very well follow it up in another video. Quick shout out to my friend Bohan for helping explain this case for me. I also want to clarify that I mean no ill will towards Sony for what I'm about to bring up. Intellectual property is worth defending, and my personal opinion on these matters is irrelevant. I'm just sharing the story here. Long story short, the Supreme Court ruling in the 1994 case, Campbell v. Acuff Rose Music Inc., states that a commercially released parody of a song, for profit or not, constitutes as fair use. However, it also states that what can be considered parody has to be determined by a set of certain guidelines, and the definition of a parody, if not completely obvious, can be determined only on a case-by-case basis. And this is the problem for Beatallica. This means that Sony can bring a suit on every single song released by Beatallica and challenge them on different merits because they're all different recordings. And this isn't the first time Sony has done something like this. It's kind of a big-name corporate thing to do in the name of protecting your investments. As a matter of fact, I'm into video gaming and I've seen this tactic by Sony before. Around 2000 to 2001, Sony sued a company called Bleem that sold various software that emulated their currently active console, the PlayStation, on various mediums like PC and the Sega Dreamcast. Sony kept losing their lawsuits, but they just kept bringing up cases against Bleem left and right until Bleem went bankrupt trying to defend themselves in court. So this potential tactic leaves Beatallica in a very tough spot. These guys don't have the money to defend themselves in court against a powerhouse like Sony once, much less multiple potential times. These guys are just a few dudes from Milwaukee having fun paying tribute to two of their favorite bands. But as big as they accidentally got, some people just didn't see it that way. Looking at the possibility of the case that may ensue here, I racked my brain and I still can't find a definitive answer to that parody question. Now, Beatallica isn't the first mashup band to happen. The first one I can think of is a band called Dred Zeppelin. Now, Dred Zeppelin is a reggae Led Zeppelin tribute with an Elvis impersonator singing lead. They are goofy as hell and amazing to enjoy, by the way. But Dred Zeppelin's Meat and Potatoes are reggae covers of Led Zeppelin songs, and it's easy to determine royalties in that case. The parody itself is just the image of the band. Now, my best assessment here is that Beatallica's material may or may not be parody because the lyrics for the most part change, but the song progression and the stories told by the songs don't. Part of Beatallica's appeal is their wavering faith to their source material, but that unfortunately hits this gray area between parody and copyright infringement. Now, this is the first time I've seen something like this happening, and as far as I know, the case would have to be determined in court to provide a definitive answer. However, court cases cost bank, and honestly, nobody on either side truly wants that. Meanwhile, the word gets out on the internet that Beatallica has been handed the cease and desist letter by Sony and makes it to various major music news sites, including MTV. A fan-oriented petition starts making the rounds in defense of keeping Beatallica active, more specifically requesting Sony retract its threat of legal action. Some rock and metal heavy hitters actually come out in support of the petition, including Beatallica's old friend Mike Portnoy. Okay, so I've always liked Mike Portnoy as a player, and I got to see him live with A7X. I also got to see Rev, by the way, rest in peace. But the more I hear about him as a person, the more awesome he gets. So while Beatallica are trying to figure out what to do, they slam on the brakes to avoid any more legal trouble. The website goes down, and they start trying to figure out what road to take from here. And then, some unlikely heroes enter the discussion. Tierney gets a phone call from none other than Lars Ulrich himself. Because of the internet furor and the rising popularity of Beatallica, Lars got the word they were in some serious legal trouble. Ulrich and Tierney discuss Beatallica and its current legal issues. During the discussion, Lars asks Tierney, "What do you want from me?" Tierney's jaw hit the floor. Lars from Metallica just personally offered his help to get things settled between his little tribute band and music powerhouse Sony. The discussion continues, and Lars essentially agrees to provide legal representation and some financial backing to open a discussion with Sony's legal representation. He sends Metallica's personal lawyer, Peter Paterno, to help provide counsel. Beatallica eventually gets the financial backing to hire legal help from Paterno, their personal friend Michael Harrington, and other local lawyers from the Milwaukee area to sit down and discuss matters with Sony's legal reps. Harrington even used Beatallica's situation as a case study for his classes at Belmont University. All in all, an agreement was reached, and full-fledged legal action was avoided, which is quite the relief to the Beatallica camp. To help understand Sony's take on the issue and the fact that the internet was so new and unregulated at the time, let me reference a quote by Peter Paterno in an interview with MTV in March 2005 in reference to the case itself. "The internet is a swamp of piracy, so you send out cease and desist letters all the time. Someone at Sony probably saw this site and sent out a letter, and once they realized what was on it, they decided it was not something worth picking a fight over. They got that this is different from selling Beatles CDs and not paying royalties. Now, Beatallica weren't looking for anything else but to be able to put their website back up and keep playing music, but they ended up with a lot more than that." Some of the details of the agreement were that Beatallica needed proper professional representation for their songs to be commercially released. Sony also negotiated that a licensing team was needed to approve of songs before they were released, and Sony was also entitled to songwriting royalties where applicable. As well, Metallica also had a say in Beatallica's representation and usage of Metallica-based imagery. Now, I had a chance to interview James Lenfield himself, Michael Tierney, on the matter, and he is more than happy with the agreement and has made a few friends in the process. His respect and admiration for everyone involved is unwavering, and Mr. Lenfield himself is a stand-up dude and really approachable regarding the matter, but I digress. This legal agreement meant that Beatallica went from a little for-fun band to a band actively looking for a label and management for legit commercial release music and representation for touring. They were approached by multiple labels, all wanting a hand in this new phenomenon. Eventually, they appropriately went with comedy label Oglio Records, and immediately started working on their first official commercial release. Their website was allowed to go back up in the process and was relaunched on May 6, 2005. In October, Beatallica started their first European tour, and in the meantime, Beatallica started working on their first official commercial release under their new label. After careful crafting and working through the proper channels to ensure Sony, Metallica, and Beatallica were happy, in July 2007, Beatallica's official label debut album, Sgt. Hetfield's Motor Breath Pub Band, was released. This album included a number of tracks from their previous free releases re-recorded so that everyone involved was entitled to their fair share, and Beatallica had an official label release to tour on. As well, during this process, the original free recordings were taken down from the website to further avoid any other legal issues. With the release of Sgt. Hetfield, Beatallica became the first mashup band not only to cause such a global stir, but also the first one to have an official release with approval from representatives from both of the major musical influences that fueled them. After Sgt. Hetfield's release, Beatallica continued to tour and work on more material, including their second full-length album, Masterful Mystery Tour, the single All You Need Is Blood, and the Christmas EP, Winter Plunder Band. Which, personal preference here, I love Paul McCartney, but the Beatallica version of Wonderful Christmas Time is the only one appropriate for my Christmas playlist. Their most recent release, 2013's Abbey Road, is a bit interesting, as due to the licensing involved in their agreement with Sony, Beatallica was not allowed to add mashup lyrics or modified song titles to this release. To date, this album is the only one that includes the majority of material from its direct influence, the Beatles' Abbey Road, unchanged, and the included songs are presented in the same order. Now, this turns the album lyrically into straight-ahead covers with the Metallica influences and borrowed riffage intact on the entire release, and it's still awesome to have a listen to the entire album on its own. But the band does have Beatallica mashup lyrics to accompany them, and if you want to hear them, you're just going to have to go see them live, because they're still allowed to sing those lyrics on stage. I picked up my copy of Abbey Road from the guys at a show back in 2018 in my area. Once you hear For Whom the Shell Tolls in person, you will be hooked on these guys as a live band. I know I'm dating this video here, but I want this quarantine shit to be over. I really want to see a live show again. So what are Beatallica up to now, and what has happened aside from the albums after the official revamp? Beatallica has continued to play shows and tour, as well as have a lineup change or two, as many working bands do. Their current lineup consists of James Lenfield on rhythm guitar and lead vocals, Gurg Hammondson III on lead guitar and backing vocals, Jimmy Olnick on drums, and Robert Stugio on bass and backing vocals. Each of these guys have their own musical projects as well. Gurg 3 runs his own studio, Hamtone Audio, and plays in a few side projects. The most famous of his other projects is backing guitarist and production for the Violent Femmes. Jimmy Olnick plays drums in his current thrash band Conniption, as well as a 50s-style rock band called Brett and the Dandies. He also joins James for spoof shows at Spoof Fest from time to time. Robert Stugio has another band he plays in as well that gets a seal of approval from James Lenfield himself as the greatest metal band to ever come out of Milwaukee, Realm. He's also active in multiple musical projects in the Twin Cities area. James, or again, Mike Tierney, when not at the helm of Beatallica, tours the Milwaukee region in his own bands Riley and the Tinker Boys, as well as continues his involvement in Milwaukee's Spoof Fest every year. Kirk Hammondson, or Michael Brandenburg, has been doing well after bowing out of Beatallica in 2006 to spend time with his family. He and Tierney still keep in contact, and whenever Voivod or Fishbone are in the Milwaukee area, you'll be sure to see both of them there. Brandenburg has another project as well, playing guitar for the Led Zeppelin tribute band No Quarter. Nowadays, the internet has changed drastically. Along with new advances in digital fidelity, the internet has developed new cultures of musical comedy along with it. One of those is the current trend of mashup culture from DJs like Bill McClintock, most well known for his mashups of Slayer and Wham, or Rick Astley and Nirvana, which at one point became so popular that Rick Astley himself joined the Foo Fighters on stage and played a deviation of that mashup live a short while back. I had the chance to ask James Lenfield himself about whether or not he thinks Beatallica may have been an influence on this current culture. What better way than to quote his response verbatim, in all caps, because he is James Lenfield. I do know that there are 3 Beatallica cover bands out there. Yes, Beatallica cover bands. Bless them. Are we a precursor to others? Sure we are, simply in the chronological sense. Are we an influence? I guess you would have to ask each band who does this sort of thing. But again, no one does it the way we do it, live and for real. So I am not sure about the complete influence. There are bands out there doing spoofy stuff, semi-mashups, etc., and they are clueless as to who we are. I guess we've never been out to be grandfathers or godfathers, but in some cases we are. Just like how bands we love, besides Metallica and the Beatles, are overlords to us. Well put, James. I also got to ask him about the current state of Beatallica with everything going on right now, such as album plans and any other possible happenings. Currently, Beatallica has material ready for approval from their licensors. As soon as they get the go-ahead, they'll be in the studio ready to put out a new album. But this process takes time to make sure all involved parties are happy with the release. However, things are always happening with them, and you can catch them at their website Beatallica.org, where their music and merchandise are available, as well as their social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. There's one thing I want to mention that was made absolutely sure throughout my Q&A with James, and that is how happy and grateful he and the entire Beatallica crew are to be able to continue this opportunity with everyone. Their personal gratitude to everyone involved with Sony, Metallica, and their respective legal representation in allowing Beatallica to continue being Beatallica, and the inspiration they've received over the years from a global, rabid fan base is immeasurable. In regards directly to Beatallica's fan base, James's words say it best. To those of you who have been with us for years, thanks for being patient and sticking by us in scarce times. We always want to be out there as much as we are allowed to be. For you newcomers, welcome to the club. We definitely hope to see all of you at a gig before too long. Until then, hit us up online. We will be in touch. Stay safe and stay hesh. Thank you for watching the video. This is the most fun I've had with a video thus far. I want to give my personal thanks to James Lenfield himself and the band Beatallica for being super approachable and awesome and helping me keep the facts straight on their amazing story. Be sure to catch them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and their website Beatallica.org for updates. Also, one more shout out to my friend Bohan for clearing up the legal terminology on the 2 Live Crew Roy Orbison case. And once again, thank you for being awesome. Be sure to like and subscribe, and my name is Mike from Ruling Note Music, reminding you to never compromise your sound.